Hey everyone, it's Tim from Linessa Farm Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us today. We are lambing and kidding on the farm, and I did not have enough time to make a video this weekend, so I figured the best thing to do was to hop on here and just kind of chat with you guys and see if anybody had anything that they wanted to talk about. If not, I'm sure I can carry on by myself for a while without any problems whatsoever. So, for those of you that are watching on YouTube and Facebook, thank you. We will be recording this and posting it on our YouTube channel, so you will be able to watch it later. So, we are dealing with a lot of problems in Indiana now. It is cold. We are negative temperatures outside right now, and the wind chill I think is 30 below. So all the animals are off a pasture and penned up right now. And we, of course, have our goats that are getting ready to start downloading today. We've already had one kid this morning, and we have some that are probably going to kid this afternoon. You'll find that your sheep and goats generally tend to lamb and kid in batches. They tend to synchronize with one another as they go into heat. And so you'll get groups that'll generally be about 14 days apart. You'll have a one or two that tend to go early, maybe a day or two earlier, and then you'll kind of get hit with a group of them, and then it'll kind of die down a little bit, and then you can figure anywhere from 12 to 14 days later, if you have more that haven't lambed or kidded yet, they're probably going to start going as well. I think the wind chill outside right now is about 35 below zero. Luckily, the wind's going to die down here this afternoon, so then we'll just be, somewhere in like the -7 range, something like that. But it is a huge issue. So we got a couple people that have jumped on already. Cody Bear Ranch in Texas. Hello. I hope the weather in Texas is better than it is here. Uh, then we got a question from R Squared. Do you find that the weather plays a role in kidding and lambing? Yeah, I think so. Um, we there's there's some anecdotal evidence to support that the weather can play a role in when the animals start to go. There's also some anecdotal evidence out there as far as what time of day do I feed the animals dictates what time of day they're going to have babies. I think what we see when it comes to the weather playing a role in the lambing or kidding is just the stress. I think sometimes the stress of the cold can cause them to lamb or kid. Anecdotal or not, I can tell you that about 3 or 4 years ago, we had a day, classic Indiana day here, where the weather dropped significantly in a 12-hour period. So I think in the morning at 7 a.m. in the morning, we were at something like 45 degrees. And by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we were down to single digits. And then by that night, we were down into negative digits. And we had a bunch of ewes that were getting ready to have babies. And they were about 3 days out, and all of them started dropping babies like immediately. It was when that temperature dropped, we had a bunch that started going into labor, and this can be some issue. This can be an issue for you. If you have a mom, we had a question this morning on YouTube, I believe, or on Facebook, and someone said, "Hey, I had this animal that was going into labor, but they weren't dilating. What do I do?" That's a tough one because uh, most of the drugs that we would give to help a mom dilate will be drugs that you absolutely have to get from a veterinarian. It isn't anything that you can get over the counter. So if I get a ewe or a doe that is in full blown labor and they're not dilating, what I will do is I will normally give them an intramuscular injection of epinephrine, and in pretty short order it will help them to dilate. If you do have dexamethasone on hand, you can give them a large dose, a large injection of about 10 cc's, 10 milliliters of dexamethasone. And over the period of the next few hours, it will cause them to loosen up enough that you can go in there and manually dilate them, and you should be able to help deliver the baby. So anytime that we're delivering babies, if you haven't got your hands on it yet and you can get your hands on it through a veterinarian, or perhaps you're lucky enough that your local feed store still has some on the shelf that they haven't sold out of yet, the terramycin scour tablets for cattle, I believe it's a 250 milliliter bolus pill of the tetracycline. If you're going into mom to manually remove a baby or do something like that after the baby is delivered, we want you to put one of those tablets inside of mom, get it up and in there, and that will help prevent any kind of infection that she may be working on. I don't come up with this stuff, so everything I just told you as far as like the dexamethasone and the scour tablets, all that, that's just me regurgitating to you directly out of the Pipestone Veterinary guide. All of you, if you're not at expert level, if you're anywhere below expert level, which I include myself in, I'm learning new stuff all the time. If you don't have the book, I would highly advise you go get it. And I don't know if my camera's backwards or not. Nope, I got it set correctly. So this is Pipestone's Veterinary Guide to Sheep and Goats. And Premier One owns this now. This did come out. This is a series of blogs that came out, and majority of these are written by the late Dr. G.F. Kennedy. He was one of the best well-known small ruminant veterinarians in the United States at his time, and he covers all kinds of different topics in here. If you don't have this book, it's 20 something dollars. Pipestone owns it now. You can go on pardon me, Premier One owns it now. Premier One absorbed a lot of Pipestone stuff, and you can go on and you can get it. And it's broken down into little, it's very easy to read. It's broken down into little tidbits and sections. And it's laid out very, very well. If you don't have this book, I would highly, highly encourage you to get it. It's written for layman terms, and it's very, very good, very, very easy to follow, and it covers pretty much everything. A majority of what you'll read in that book is stuff that I talk about on our videos and on our website and things like that. If you haven't checked out our website, www.linessafarms.com, I know most of you know that. We do have a download section on there that has a lot of valuable information that you can get as far as records and mixing up things, all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. I also write some blogs on there. I also write some articles on there dealing with various topics. So that's valuable information as well. If you want to get in the deep weeds of reading veterinary stuff, you can get this thing. This is the Merck Veterinary Manual. The problem that you're going to run into with this is that it's all in medical terminology and medical lingo, and it can be extremely difficult to follow. So something for you to keep in mind, I would definitely start off with the Pipestone Veterinary Guide first. And if you are a medically inclined person, if you're a physician, graduate level medical stuff, nurse practitioner, something like that, an RN, you're gonna struggle a little bit to follow it, but you can follow it. So just something for you to keep in mind. If you guys have any questions today, this is open forum, so feel free to ask any questions and let us know. I'm trying to think of any other really interesting questions I've had recently. Breech births. When our ewes and our does are getting ready to deliver the baby, we want to be there and we want to watch. And if you're going to get up in their business, the one thing that I would tell you to check immediately, if you're going to be out there and you're going to see it happen, if you're going to see them going into labor, the very first thing that I want you to look at is the presentation of the baby. So when that baby is coming out, a normal presentation of a baby is going to be, the hooves are going to be like this, and the face is going to be up over top of it. And you may see the feet come out first. So the easiest way to look at this is when you're standing up and you're looking at the back end of this ewe or this doe, you should be seeing the tops of the feet. If you're seeing bottoms of feet coming out towards you like that, that tells you that that baby's breech, because you can imagine those back legs are coming out, and the way they're coming out, you're seeing the bottom of the legs. If you see a breech birth, you need to pull the baby, and you need to pull it as quickly as possible. So why is this? Well, when the umbilicus breaks, when that baby starts to come out of the birth canal, it it's going to trigger that baby to start to take a breath. And what can occur is if that baby's coming out breech and the head is still inside of mom, that baby is going to take a breath, it's going to aspirate. And a lot of times, if you have a breech birth that's unassisted, especially if it's a new mom, that baby's going to aspirate on mom, the fluids inside of mom, and it's going to come out and it's going to be dead on arrival. You can get lucky if you have a mom that's maybe 5, 6 years old. She's very experienced, and the baby's just kind of come right out. It may come out fast enough. Once that baby comes out, if it is a breech birth, we also want you to swing them by the legs. If they're a little bit raspy, you can grab them by their back legs and you can swing them. And what that's doing is just inertia, gravity is helping that fluid to get out of the lungs, and to make sure that that baby hasn't aspirated. Unfortunately, we got a message yesterday from an individual that said, I had the baby was coming out backwards and it took me forever to get it out. And yeah, the baby was dead on arrival. So it is unfortunate. It does happen. The other thing I would tell you to consider is how closed in is your environment. Right now, because we've got 30 below wind chills outside, we've got a lot of our animals uh, in a higher capacity in our barn than we would normally like to have this time of year. And you always want to keep an eye on your waterers. We like to use hog waters. I think they work great as single hole hog water. I like single hole hog waters for two reasons. One, I like the metal ones because I can put a heater inside of there and it tends to work really, really good. You've got the tray on the bottom that the lambs and the goat kids can drink out of. And then you've got the top that's a little higher up that the adults can drink out of. The other thing that I like about it is it's high enough up off the ground that the moms can't have a baby in the water. And you're probably thinking to yourself like, what are you talking about? And if you talk to anybody that's had low waters before, like maybe kind of like those Rubbermaid tubs, something like that, where they have standing water. I've had it happen to me about 7 years ago. I know other people have had it happen to them. It's like just a fluke. The way the mom's delivering the baby, she swings around and the baby is born and it literally drops right in the water. I know it sounds crazy. And then you go out there and you find you got a dead baby floating in your water, which is not good. The other thing I would tell you when it comes to your waters, especially open waters like hog waters, is once your goat kids get past maybe like a week of age, you need to put a lid on top of that thing. And the reason is what goat kids like to do. They like to jump on things. And goat kids will literally jump into your hog waters because they don't realize that there's nothing on top of there to jump onto, and they will literally jump in there and they will drown. I've seen it happen. It's just right. It's goats. I think one of the interviews we did with Larry Lorenzi said, from the day goats are born, they're trying to find a way to kill themselves. And sounds kind of morbid, but they're just very curious. They're fun. That's what makes goats fun, is that they're curious and they like to hop around, and they're always up in your business. They're kind of like puppies, and that's what I like about goats. They've got a lot more personality than the sheep tend to. But because of that, they tend to get themselves in trouble. I've seen goats die from the weirdest things, and you think, what are the odds of that happening? Well, the odds of that happening, because it's a goat, are significantly higher. So we've got our friends here. We've got Lewis. Hi, Lewis. Nice to see you. Hope your puppy's doing well. And then we've got our favorite name in all of goat and sheep farms, the Vets Grow Fuzzy Butt Farm. It is 5 degrees now and the high is 7 today, 30-mile-an-hour wind. Had one goat born 2 days ago, and I have 2 nannies due today. Luckily, they have a barn to go in and out of. Yeah, I think getting out of the wind and the elements is the important thing. If you take sheep and goats and you lock them up in a really tightly controlled area and you overheat it, a lot of times what you're going to see is you're going to be running around with antibiotics, injecting everybody all winter long because they tend to want to develop pneumonia if they're locked up too tight. If you have an area that keeps them out of the wind and it can keep them dry, they will do relatively well. Heat lamps. I'm not a huge fan of heat lamps, but I'll tell you, when it comes to temperatures, that are sub freezing for long periods of time, a heat lamp may work out really well for you. I like the Premier One heat lamps. They're completely enclosed. They got a screw on protector on the end of it, and I don't have to worry about barn fires. As far as the old ones, the old aluminum ones that you bump up against them and they taco, things like that, I'm not a fan of those. We had a video that we put out where we showed you how easily it starts a fire. Basically, I just plugged in a heat lamp and I set it on top of some straw, and I think within a few minutes there was like full fire going. And we've known people in here in Indiana, and I'm sure in other cold environments where, it seems like, unfortunately, maybe one barn every couple years, we know somebody that has a barn burned down because they've had something happen with a heat lamp, it gets knocked over, or the bulb breaks and falls out and it's hot enough that it starts a fire. So just be really careful. The Premier One heat lamps are expensive, but they last forever. They're basically crush proof. I can stand on one and it won't break. So you figure if 225 pounds can stand on one of those and it won't break, that's good enough. The other thing that we like to buy is those thermal cubes. You can pick those up, I think, on Amazon, and it's a thermal cube. And what it does is it plugs in to your outlet. You plug it into an outlet, and it has two outlets that come off of it. And there's a built-in thermostat inside that thermocube. And so what happens is it does not power up until the temperature drops below freezing. And so those are really nice. Now you got to make sure you get the right thermal cube, because there's opposite ones that they won't turn on until it's above freezing. And I think those are like orange or red colored. So be careful when you're buying them and make sure you buy the correct one. So yeah, let's see what we've got here. As far as, I put a ram in November 18th. How can I tell if the ewes are pregnant? Now you would be forced to do either urine test strips, or you would be, let me show you what Bill asked here. So Bill said, I put a ram in November 18th. How can I tell if the ewes are pregnant? So you have three options. You can get them ultrasounded. You can do the urine test strips, which are really fun, trying to catch urine coming off the back of a ewe. You can do a search online. You can find those urine test strips, or you can get a time machine and go back in time and put a marking harness on it and see if he marks them. But I joke, Bill. But even then, just because a ram or a buck marks a ewe or a doe, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've taken. Now, normally it does. But yeah, as you move farther and farther along in the pregnancy cycle, when we get to be about a month out, we'll normally tend to see them start to bag out. But until then, yeah, you're really stuck with some kind of serum testing. So, blood or urine testing, or you're stuck with ultrasound. Ultrasound is the best, I feel, for multiple reasons. One, a good veterinarian or a good rad tech can utilize or a good ultrasound tech can utilize the ultrasound to not only tell you if they're pregnant, but they can also give you the added benefit of telling you how many babies you have. And they can also give you an expected due date. If you get a really good ultrasound tech or a really good vet, they can look at those and they can tell you when they're due within usually about a week or two, and how many you have. Now, the problem with ultrasound is if you wait until they're too far along, as those babies grow and develop, it's almost impossible for us to tell you how many babies are in there. We can tell you that they're pregnant, and we can tell you that there's a baby or babies, but as fast as they grow and as close as they get together, it becomes extremely difficult for us to tell you, how many that you have. So that's what I would advise. If you're not handy with drawing blood, go with the urine, or you can go with the blood samples, and they can be a little pricey as well. So if I were in an area where money was an issue and I didn't want to deal with it, you're kind of stuck in wait now. So you're looking at December, January, February, March, April. So you're looking at maybe, late March or early to mid-April timeframe, depending on when they took, if they took immediately. So it can be difficult for you. So hopefully that helped you out, Bill. Sorry for the time machine comment. That was kind of a joke. Marking harnesses. Marking harnesses are a really valuable tool. I really like them. tells me a couple different things. So when I put a ram in with ewes, I'll put a marking harness on them. It's a harness that you can buy, and what it does is there's a crayon that sits on their chest, and it's a big wax crayon that sits on their chest, and they have various colors. And so what you would do is you put the marking harness on your ram, you put him in with your ewes, and you'll see when he is landing your ewes or your does, what they'll do is that harness will rub on their back, and you will actually see that color. Now, the boys tend to try to go after the girls sometimes a little early before they'll actually stand for them. So if you were to go out and you were to see a mark on the back of a ewe or a doe that was like a single little mark, nah, that's not it. A lot of times that's just he tried to get up on her and she kicked him off. When they mark a ewe or a doe, you will know, like, it is significant. Um, and then what I like to do is I like to let them go through that cycle with that marking harness on, and then I change the color out. So I may start them off with something like, let's say, red or yellow, and then once they run through that initial heat cycle, I'll change out the color. And that tells me two things. It tells me if the ewe or the doe is getting remarked because perhaps she didn't take the first time, and then it just helps me to differentiate between all those different times. So marking harness, different colors, best way that you can go. And then you can kind of do your math out from there. And I'll leave the marking harness on the buck or the ram until the marking stops and I'm not seeing it anymore. And then that tells me, okay, we're good to go. There's also what's called rattle powder. Rattle powder is a powder that you can get, and you can just put it all over the brisket of the ram or the buck, and they will mark them as well. You can also, if you don't care about keeping your wool, you can go to your local hardware store and you can get the chalk that they use for chalk lines, string lines, for marking. You can mix a little bit of that with some vegetable oil, and you can put that all over their brisket, and they will mark just as well. It just makes a holy crap mess, and it will basically ruin the wool. It'll be stained. It'll stain the wool, but you know if you're like us, we don't sell our wool. Our wool goes into our compost piles. Um, it doesn't matter. So whatever works out best for you and for your budget. All right. So, hello, Autumn. Nice to see you. I'm glad you caught us live as well. It's been a while since we've done a live stream. Richard Gregory, 3 degrees in north central Ohio. No lambs coming until March 25th. Yay! One less thing to worry about, right? What are the pros and cons of the thermal cube versus a heat lamp? So when you think of the thermal cube and the heat lamp, you just think of the thermal cube as a tool that will turn that heat lamp on and off. Um, based off of the ambient air temperature. So I always use the thermal cubes because I don't want that heat lamp running 24/7. I don't think that they need it. I think that you're wasting power and you're getting those animals too used to that warmth, and they can have a hard time acclimating to air temperature. You know, it can be 0 outside. I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just telling you for Jewa's information. It can be 0 outside, as long as they're out of the wind and they're out of the precipitation. Those babies will stay warm. You know, they'll cuddle with mom. They'll get warm milk off of mom, they're generally fine. But you know, there are times where you would want to use a heat lamp. So we think of that thermal cube as a tool you use in conjunction with your heat lamp. It will control when that heat lamp turns on and off. I personally use thermocubes or thermal cubes, whatever they're called, with every heat lamp. You can also use it with your water buckets. If you have heated water buckets that don't have a built-in thermostat and you only want them to be running when they need to, the thermocube works out well as well. Now, you have to watch because you know you get all these heat buckets, all these heat lamps, all these things, and you're going to end up with tripped breakers. So you want to be careful. You know, really pay attention to the breaker when you initially plug all this stuff in and get going. And anytime you add something new to it, because you don't want to plug a bunch of new in, go to bed, it's 11 o'clock at night, and you go in and lay down, you come out the next morning and there's no heat, all the water's frozen and everything's happened because your breaker flipped, you know, while you were sleeping. So be cautious when you're using all these things, and try to get your animals grouped together to where the less you can use, the better. So, for instance, if you have two ewes, three ewes, two does, three does, and you may have them in an individual lambing or kidding pen. They're not quite ready to let out yet, but they're uh, doing good enough that they're bonded. You can put them in a larger pen where maybe instead of having each individual pen, now maybe you have them in a larger pen where there's one heat lamp and one water trough that maybe three or four moms and their babies can share if they need that extra amount of time before you put them out in general population. So try to consolidate. That's the word I was looking for. Try to consolidate um, and use as little power as you have to. So, okay, let's see what else we got going on here. What do you recommend giving baby goats that when they have like the flu? So, if you have an individual, a common issue that you can run into with babies, newborns, is if they're raspy. Maybe they aspirate a little bit when they were born, or maybe they developed some kind of crud when they were coming out. uh, I use LA200 or New Floor. LA200 is given at a rate of 1 milliliter, excuse me, LA200 is given at 5 milliliters per 100 pounds of body weight as a subcutaneous injection, repeat after 48 hours. So LA200 is 5 milliliters per 100 pounds of body weight, and you can do the math from there. New Floor is going to be 6 milliliters per 100 pounds of body weight. A lot of veterinarians will refer to or LA200 as the poor man's New Floor. They're both prescription now, so it just depends on which one you can get your hands on and how much money you want to spend. If you've got the money, you can go with Draxin or one of the generic Draxins that are out there and available now. Draxin's nice because Draxin is a long-acting antibiotic, so generally you only have to give them one shot and you're done. I don't recall the dosage of Draxin off the top of my head, and I'm not a vet, so I'm not just going to throw something off the cuff. But from an economical standpoint, usually it's going to be LA200 or New Floor. And if you've got the money and you want to spend it, and when I say if you've got the money, the reason I say that, I think a 100 milliliter bottle of Draxin is somewhere near or around $300. And I think even the generics, you're still going to spend probably 100 and something, close to 200. If anybody knows off the top of their head, they can correct me. But it's really expensive stuff. So that is that. Hi, Tim. I have a few baby lambs at 3 months old, and the front legs started to bend at the knees. Ooh. Um, yeah, you'll have to let me know if they're bending backwards or if they're starting to buckle. If you're dealing with weakness of the muscles and the joints, a lot of times you're probably dealing with a vitamin E deficiency. So, I would look at vitamin E, I would look at selenium. If you're having issues to where they're getting lame again, you could be dealing with navel ill. A lot of times, so navel ill, we talk about navel ill, and we talk about giving the 1 milliliter of CDT mixed with 1 milliliter of penicillin at birth is what we do during our processing. Again, we don't come up with this. This is, again, you'll read about it in here. That comes from Pipestone, and a lot of the mass producers will do this. The reason that we give the 1 milliliter of CDT mixed with 1 milliliter of penicillin at birth is to protect against navel ill. Navel ill will affect the joints. It basically destroys the joints, and it tends to affect the front knee area of the lambs and goat kids, and it destroys that joint. And what will end up happening is, instead of being a smooth joint in there now, if they do survive it, it'll be more like sandpaper. And so we do see individuals that get either full-blown issues of navel ill or subacute issues with navel ill when the babies are small, and then they doctor them up and they seem to do fine. And then as they age and they start to put on weight, they become lame again, and it comes back again. So We always talk about clipping and dipping the navel at birth. That is the first way that we protect against navel ill. You either clip the navel and dip it in iodine, or you clip the navel and spray it down with antiseptic or antibacterial spray. But we personally also give the 1 milliliter CDT, 1 milliliter of penicillin mixed together in the same syringe, give it to them subcutaneously. We're going to protect them against tetanus, and we're going to protect them against navel ill. That's the whole reason. Plus, if they do have a little bit of aspiration gunk that's going on, the penicillin will generally help to clear that up as well. So it really does a wide swath of things. I understand the concerns with treating with antibiotics if not needed. This is simply an animal welfare issue that we utilize, and it helps us from having a lot of problems. So take that as you will. All right. Tommy Weaver says Caleb Fuller is a good resource. I'm not familiar with Caleb, but I will take your word for it. When, if at all, is it okay to give Coccidia medication to pregnant ewes? So that's a tough question. First thing I would tell you is you need to make 100% sure that you are in fact dealing with coccidia. So you want to do a fecal sample and verify that you are indeed dealing with coccidia. If you do have a coccidia issue going on, then yeah, you need to treat it. So there's a couple different ways that we deal with coccidia on a farm. We can deal with prevention. We can deal with treatment of a subclinical infection of coccidia, and then we can deal with coccidiosis, which is full-blown coccidia. They're having signs and symptoms. They're sick. They've got scours and things like that. So when it comes to prevention, the big three medications that we use for prevention are Decox, Bovatec, and Rumensin. Decox, Bovatec, and Rumensin are feed additives that are given to sheep and goats, and it affects the reproductive state of the coccidia. In some cases, depending on the medication, it can kill them as well. And you would want to give that to clean up your ewes and your does, and to keep them clean during the kidding and lambing process. And then throughout the kidding and lambing process, we're stopping the life cycle of the coccidia before it becomes a problem. If you do a fecal test on a ewe or a doe or a ram or a buck or whatever, and you see you've got this large amount of coccidia in them, but they are not yet showing signs and symptoms of full-blown coccidiosis, then you can deal with your veterinarian to look at giving them sulfa medications. You can give them Corid, you can give them toltrazuril. I would go, probably, if I had the choice of what I wanted to treat them with, I would personally start with toltrazuril, then consider sulfa, and then as the last one, I would consider Corid. I'm not a huge fan of Corid. Corid does work, but the method in which Corid works is through a hampering of thiamine, the vitamin B1. It stops the coccidia from being able to get the vitamin B that they need. And if you give it in too high of doses, you can cause issues with that animal not being able to get the vitamin B that they need as well. And then it creates all kinds of problems, like you hear about goat polio, lamb polio, things like that. That's a thiamine deficiency. And we won't get into the deep weeds of that here, but that's what I would advise. Me personally, I would start with the toltrazuril, then I would consider the sulfa drugs, and then I would consider the Corid. Now, toltrazuril is a huge thing out there now. If you've been online, you've seen people trying to push you toltrazuril. Toltrazuril works really, really good. If it keeps getting pushed the way that it's getting pushed, and it keeps getting overused the way that it's getting overused, we're going to see the same issue with toltrazuril that we see with Corid, in that we're going to develop resistant coccidia. There are Corid resistant coccidia out there now on farms that they have coccidia, they try to give Corid, and it doesn't do anything. I talked to a vet friend of mine in Alabama last week or the week before, and she was like, yep. She's like, went to a farm, full-blown coccidia problem, Corid isn't touching it. The problem with toltrazuril is it's not FDA approved in the United States. It's a weird kind of thing. Canada, Europe, all over the world, they're using toltrazuril. It's made by Bayer. It's sold as Baycox, I believe is the name of it. But here in the U.S., it's not FDA approved. So We sell toltrazerol on our farm store. We get it, we sell it. That's not We're not breaking the law by doing that. But a veterinarian, in many cases, is not going to advise you to use toltrazerol because it's not FDA approved, and it puts them in a weird situation where they can get in trouble for doing that. So just keep that in mind. Work with your veterinarian, see what your veterinarian says, and kind of go from there. But again, we want to go off of evidence. We don't want to treat an animal for something that they don't have. That's how we end up having resistance, and that's how we end up having problems. um, if they've got coccidia and they're having problems, then you got to treat them, pregnant or not pregnant. You got to treat them, because if you don't, then you're going to have all kinds of other issues. If you can, what you want to do when you're going into lambing and kidding season, and when you're in the lambing and kidding season, and all the way up through weaning season, we highly encourage you to utilize Decox, Bovatec, or Rumensin. They work good. They do their job. It helps keep everybody clean, and you can go from there. A lot of the problems that we see on farms with failure to thrive, with problems with our growers, our lambs or our goat kids that have failure to thrive, is there's a subclinical level of coccidia going on there that has damaged the lining of the intestines to where they are just not getting the nutrition that they need. So a lot of times when you see these lambs that just you can give them all the food that they want, and they're eating, and they're eating tons, and they're doing everything outwardly that they appear that they need to be doing, but they're having failure to thrive. A lot of times what we see post mortem, when we cut them open and we look at the lining of that intestine, it's just all scarred up and damaged. So what's happening? Well, essentially the animal's taking in the nutrition that they need, but the body's not able to absorb it properly. And since the body can't absorb it, then it's just going right through the system, and it's not doing that animal any good. The lining of your small intestines is lined with hair-like fibers. We call them cilia, and that's to increase surface area. So even in humans, a majority of the nutrition is actually absorbed in the small intestines. A majority of all the vitamins and nutrients and all that stuff is actually absorbed in the small intestines. The large intestine really mostly just absorbs water. Um, so if that small intestinal lining gets damaged to where those cilia are scarred up, they're no longer there. It's less surface area for them to absorb nutrition, and you can feed them all that you want, but it's probably not going to do them a whole lot of good. The key is prevention. You want to get ahead of these things before you have a problem. All right. So Autumn says, I have four Cheviots and I'm raising them for wool. I would like to know if their diet should be different than if I was raising them for market. This might sound silly. No, it's not a silly question. So there's a lot of potions out there, as far as like for shag, for show lambs. Oh, if you use this shampoo and use this and use that, it's going to make their hair grow and all that. Yeah, right. It's the same thing with me. I'm losing my hair, right? Is there a magic shampoo out there that I can use that's going to cause my hair to grow back? No, there's not. I wish there was. I would go buy it right now. But, it's easy to get caught up in these things. It's funny, if you look at it, if someone were to market you, a person, some of these medications and some of these, I won't give them the courtesy of calling it a medication. If someone were to market you some kind of potion to do some of the things that they say these sheep and goat supplements do, you would be like, there's no way. But for some reason, when we look at the animals, it's like we lose all logic, and we're like, oh, okay. So, when it comes, I'm not saying that shampoo and stimulating the hair follicles and doing all that stuff doesn't help. Of course it helps. But the reality is this stuff is grown from the inside out. So the best thing that you can do for your animal, for any animal, is to make sure that you give them a good nutrition. You want to give them a good free choice mineral that's specifically designed for what you're raising. So if you're raising sheep, you want a good mineral for sheep. If you're raising goats, you want a good mineral for goats. And you want to give them everything that they need nutritionally to help them grow and be healthy. And that is what's going to really lead to a really good wool coat. If you're getting wool breakage, wool slippage, things like that, a lot of times we can trace this back to that animal is probably not getting the nutrition, the adequate nutrition that they need, and they may be under a significant amount of stress. So if I were to raise an animal specifically for wool, I would really make sure that they were getting good forage, good nutrition as far as a free choice mineral, free choice sodium bicarbonate, um, good clean water, and I would keep them out of the mud as far as like laying down or anything like that in muddy areas that can lead to issues as well that can cause wool slippage and wool breakage and wool loss. So it all comes back to nutrition, 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 and that's a lot of it. That's the hardest part with a lot of it here. Our friends at Vets Grow Fuzzy Butt Farm put my buck in a pen next to the nannies for a week to kind of bring them into heat, into a cycle, and then they all kitted within 3 days. Uh, so yeah, this is what we call the ram buck effect, and it's really complicated, and we could really do a whole video series on teaser rams, teaser bucks, and ram effect and things like that. So what's going on here? When we want to time our animals and we want to get them all together, what can we do? So in a perfect world, let's say that I'll give you the best case scenario. Best case scenario, let's say I had 25 ewes or 25 does, and I wanted them all to breed as close together as possible, but I didn't want to use any artificial hormones like a cedar implant, PG600, anything like that. What would I do? If I could do anything that I wanted, I would take those 25 and I would put them somewhere completely separate from a male, completely separate. And when I say separate, I don't mean a fence. I mean like miles. I would move them to my other farm up the road, and I would put them there by themselves where they were away from males for a period of a couple months, maybe during the summer months when they're grazing. And then when I wanted them to go into estrus, I could do a couple different things. I could put what's called a teaser male in there with them. A teaser is an intact male ram or buck that's been vasectomized. So he's intact. He has all the luteinizing hormone. He has all the testosterone, but he's shooting blanks. And I can put him in there with them. And what will happen is his scent and his pheromones and everything that's going on with him, when I put him in with those females, it will cause them to start to cycle. This is called the ram effect. And we won't get into what causes this. It's very complicated, but they will start to cycle. As I leave him in there with them, it will cause them to cycle. After they cycle a few times, after they go through a few heats, because once they start to cycle, they're going to continue to cycle and cycle and cycle until they get bred. And I'm going to put that teaser in there with them, and I'm going to have him in there, and I'm going to get them cycling. And then once after a couple cycles, now I'm going to pull that teaser out. I'm going to put my intact male in there, and they're going to be cycling much closer together. And so now he's going to be able to breed them and land them, and they're going to be a much tighter pack. Now you can do the ram effect, but with a fence. So you could bring in an intact male that is fertile, and you can put him on the opposite side of the fence, or maybe a couple fences away from him, to where uh, ideally we'd like them to be able to be nose to nose. The problem that you can run into with this is you can run into destructive problems, because if those ewes or those does are in full-blown heat and you've got an intact male in there, they will do anything in their power to get into them, and you may run into broken fences, broken gates, things like that. So that's what the big time producers are doing a lot of times, is they are bringing in, uh, even if they're going to do laparoscopic artificial insemination, or if they're going to use artificial insemination, or if they're going to use, cedar implants with PG600, whatever, what they're doing before the show, before you're seeing it, is they're bringing in a teaser. They're getting them all synchronized together, and then they may put in cedars and give them a shot of PG600, which is going to bring them even closer. But that's what's called the ram effect. Now, unfortunately, I get questions. Okay, can I use a castrated male? You can. It doesn't work nearly as well. Not nearly as well. Can I put a goat in with sheep? Will that do it? Yeah, but not nearly as well. The gold standard is you want to put a teaser ram or a teaser buck in there with them. What other questions do I get in regard to that? So that's the big one, and it will cause them to start to cycle together. And then you utilize your marking harness, as we talked about earlier in the program, and you just go from there. And it will bring them much tighter and closer together. So, good question. The downside of this is if you have a farm where you don't have the space to get them apart, it's not going to work for you. If you've got a male that's with them all the time, uh, it's not going to work for you. And if it does, it's going to be a very minimal effect. So that is a problem. And I understand, people don't have multiple farms where they can shuttle animals around. If you could find a buddy that would be willing to take maybe your male for a few months, and you could take your male off your farm, put him somewhere, and then bring him back and reintroduce him, that might be something that you would consider as well. So great question. Thank you very much for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Can I get the free range minerals I need for my sheep from you? Yes. So we have, if you go to our website, lenusfarms.com, and you look at our store, we have minerals that are made specifically for males. We have minerals that are made specifically for moms. We have uh, fill in the blank, sheep, goats, and all the categories of sheep and goats. We have them. So our minerals, we have an animal nutritionist. We're very fortunate where we're located in Indiana. We're right up the road from Purdue University. So our animal nutritionist that designs our minerals is actually a graduate from Purdue University Animal Science, and he makes minerals specifically for the different animals. So that's a great question. Thanks for the plug. You don't have to get from us. There's tons of great minerals out there. I know, not a very good sales tactic, but uh, do I like our minerals? Yes. Do I think our minerals are the best? They're one of the best, guaranteed. If you talk to anybody that's used our minerals, they'll tell you that. However, there are really, really good minerals out there that are in your area, guaranteed. You just got to look to try to find them. Um, some of you, it may be easier to find than others. What we don't want you to do is we don't want you just to go to Tractor Supply or the farm store and just pick up like generic animal mineral and throw it out there to them. You can run into all kinds of problems. So we sell a good free choice mineral. There are other individuals that sell free choice minerals as well. The other benefit of having a really good free choice mineral that's specifically designed, like for instance, ours, they only need 1 ounce per head per day. So it's a very small amount. So instead of wasting mineral, sometimes people look at our price and they're like, that's really high. Yeah, but it's 1 ounce per head per day. So an itty bitty amount, you can just go out there, lay it out in the tray. They're going to clean it up immediately and they're getting everything that they need. We also have medicated mineral. So we have, if for those of you that don't want to feed grain, but you still want to protect against coccidia, we have medicated minerals that have the mineral plus vitamins, plus they have decox in the mix, which will help with the coccidia as well. So enough about me. Drew, hello from Northwest Ohio. Hi, Drew. Hope you're doing well. You're not too horribly far away from us. Patty, good morning. Hi, Patty. Patty, you're in Texas. We need feed for you and lambs. You have do more, but we're having a hard time finding it. What do you recommend? So Texas. Um, so there are lots and lots of places in Texas, although I know you can be kind of out there when it comes. Texas is a huge state. For those of you that have never been to Texas, like huge. So you have very urban areas, you have very suburban areas, and then you have areas where it's like you have no internet access, no cell phone access, nothing, and maybe the closest town is quite a ways away. So there are feed additives and things that you can utilize online. We mentioned us. You can also reach out. What I would do is I would reach out to your closest large town that has a grain elevator or a feed mill there. And I would reach out to them and say, hey, this is what I got. This is what I'm doing. And what you may find is, first thing you may find is it's extremely cost effective for you. The other thing is it may not be as difficult as you anticipate. A lot of times what you can do is you can get large containers. You can get like mini bulk containers, those water containers that are in cages. You can cut the tops off of them. We've seen people utilize 55-gallon trash drums. You can do all kinds of stuff and drive to these feed mills, and they will load you up with feed. You can bring it back to your farm, you can store it, and you can use it as needed. And a lot of them will make a special mix just for you based off of your specific needs. So you may find that you may have to make an hour drive to get where you need to go to get it, but it may come out to help you significantly in the long run. So just something for you to consider. We do have a few friends that are in Texas. We have some friends that are in various parts of Texas. So if you have a problem finding anybody, feel free to reach out to me. Send me an email online, and I will get back with you. Let me put down my email address here for you. It's timothy.ventrilo at linessafarms.com. So if you guys have any questions, direct questions, you're having problems finding information, whatever, you can email me at this email address that I just posted, and I can get you in touch with somebody that can help you out. I don't have the answers to everything. If I don't have the answers, I have enough friends that I can put you in touch with that do have the answers. So, Drew, do you feed much grain during pregnancy so the lambs are not too big? So, we changed things up a little bit this year, Drew, and that's a great question. So, normally, what we were doing is we were really, I wouldn't say we were pouring the grain to our sheep and our goats, but we were giving them quite a bit of grain in the late pregnancy, the third trimester section of pregnancy. So that third trimester, that last third of pregnancy is almost always the growing finishing stage of that baby. And so you have to be careful how much grain you're giving them during that last trimester, because they can put on a ton of weight, and then the babies start putting on a ton of weight, and then you run into issues where the babies are getting stuck. You may see this referred to as dystocia or other issues, but essentially the babies are getting stuck in the birth canal. Mom's birth canal, even when she's completely dilated, is not big enough for these babies to get out. The other issue that you run into is it's more stressful for the mom. So even if the mom can deliver the baby, you have longer labor periods, you have more stress and wear and tear on mom, more stress and wear and tear on the baby, and it leads to more slower starts, and things like that. A lot of people think that they really need to pour the grain to their moms in late gestation period because they think that a bigger baby equates to a bigger grown baby, and that's not true. The size of that baby when it's born is not indicative of how big that baby is going to be when it's 3 weeks old, a month old, 6 months old, whatever. Um, Within reason, those babies are going to have the genetic potential that they are going to have regardless of how much you feed that mom in that last trimester. So you have to find the sweet spot. So we used to give a more grain than we should have, and I've had issues in the past where I am pulling babies. I thought I was doing mom a favor, but I really wasn't. So we have really tempered our feed back this year. Our animals are getting really, really good quality hay. They're getting a good grass, alfalfa, clover mix, and they're getting all the minerals that they need. So we're sure that they have the optimal nutrition that they need. But we are not grain finishing out our last trimester. They're getting everything that they need without it. So what have I seen this year? Um, I have not had any stuck babies yet this year. I haven't had any outward issues that I can see with milk production is still the same. Thriftiness of the babies, everything else is still par for the course. So I'm not getting stuck babies. Labor have been easier. I will tell you that the babies have been smaller. So at birth, you know, we had some babies in the past that were over 12 pounds at birth. Now, my babies this year are probably more in the 7 to 8 pound range, but they are doing just fine. So, that has been my personal experience this year. If you wanted to grain feed, if they need the extra energy, that's okay. You just got to temper yourself a little bit. So, you know, 2 pounds per head per day, yeah, that's too much. Maybe think about maybe more like a half a pound per head per day of corn, something like that, as long as they're getting all the other nutrition that they need. But if you put yourself in a situation where the only nutrition that they're really getting is from the grain, now you've got a problem. You may need to reevaluate and kind of take a step back and say, okay, how can I get them the nutrition that they need without pouring grain to them? And that comes in the form of a good mineral, and good quality hay. So just something for you to keep in mind. All right. And Cody Bear Ranch says he's got some contacts as well. So that's great. Thank you, Cody. Appreciate it. We have some Larry from Trinidad. Hi, Larry. Nice to see you. Uh, Vets Grow Fuzzy Butt Farm. Said he's got a livestock nutrition center in his area that he utilizes. Um, yeah, so that's good. Again, talking about just tempering yourself and not overfeeding. Uh, we're getting close to the hour time frame, so I did want to. If you guys have any other questions, throw them out there now or forever hold your peace. I'm going to try to do this every week. Um, at least all the way through lambing and kidding season. So if you guys have questions, you can ask. You can also look at our online Facebook forum. If you're not on our forum, it's a great way for you to ask your questions whenever you want, and we can answer you. That is Linessa Farms Tack Box on Facebook, and I'll type that in here. Farms Tack Box, and all you got to do is look for it, and you can sign up, and we'll let you come on there. And then if you have any questions, we will answer them for you. It's a great place to go. We moderate the snot out of it, so if you ask, if you ask a question, you're not going to get any of the crap that you get on a lot of the forums where you get people with like they're either flaming you, they're calling you stupid, people trying to like sell you stuff, all that stuff. We don't have any of that goes on our forum, because if you do, you just immediately get ejected. And we have very good people that are on there that can answer a lot of questions, everywhere from the show side of things to the nutrition side of things and the anatomy physiology side of things, everything in between. So that's a really great place to ask your questions. Sweet Licks bloat guard blocks. So yeah, that's a problem. So when you give choices to animals, these animals are just like children, right? So it's like, I give my 3-year-old peas and chocolate pudding. They're gonna go after the chocolate pudding because it tastes better. The Sweet Licks bloat guard blocks contain a medication that works really, really well for bloat, and it's designed to make them eat it, because if they don't eat it, it don't work. So that Sweet Licks block is packed full of yummy stuff like molasses and other things. And so when we utilize a bloat guard block, the only time of the year that we utilize a bloat guard block is right before we send them out to pasture. So when we're transitioning our sheep and our goats from dry lot to pasture, that's a transition that is very subtle, because what can happen is if you just take a bunch of animals from dry lot, you throw them out on pasture, you're going to deal with bloat and all kinds of other problems. So we we go through a transition period where we send our animals from dry lot to pasture, and that includes us slowly starting to increase their feed over a period of about a week going out to pasture, and introduction of a bloat guard block. And what we want them to do is we want them to get that medication into their system before they go out to pasture. Now, our animals always have free choice sodium bicarb, so that's not an issue. But why are we slowly increasing their feed? We're slowly increasing their feed because when we put them out on pasture, we want them to be full. We want them to be uh, stuffed. It's like, you just went to the buffet and now someone offers you a piece of pie and you're like, no, I can't eat anymore. You don't ever want to put really hungry animals out on pasture. And that'll help with the bloat as well. So 1 week prior, we give them the bloat guard block. We slowly taper them up to make sure that they're as full as they can reasonably be without health issues. And then we transition them out into the pasture. And at that point, the bloat guard block is gone. Um, and then they're just on free choice sodium bicarb. So that's what we utilize it for. We utilize the bloat guard block as a tool to use for a short period of time before we send them out. So if you're utilizing it all the time, it's very expensive, and it may be unnecessary. So consider utilizing it in that way, and then just offering your free choice mineral instead. So great question. Yes, Bill, we do have multiple videos out there showing how to trim goat hooves and sheep hooves. I've got two specific ones. I've got one where I'm doing goat hooves and one that I'm doing sheep hooves. So if you go to YouTube and you just type in Linessa Farms goat hoof trim, boom, it'll pop up. If you have one that's Linessa Farm sheep hoof trim, it'll just pop up. And I did not do easy animals. I think the ram that I chose to do for the video was like 270 something pounds. And you'll see it's a very entertaining video. And the goat was a difficult one as well. To show you a video of something easy doesn't really help you out at all, but they are on YouTube and you can check them out. So anytime you have a question about animal health, anything like that, it's as simple as you just go to YouTube and type in Linessa Farms and then follow it by what your question is. And chances are we have a video. If we don't have a video, then shoot me an email and be like, hey, you need to make a video about this, and I'll do my best to get a video out to you. Okay. Do you have a ballpark on what the cost to ship your free choice mineral? All of our stuff ships for free? Well, that's not true. Everything that we have is $1 shipping, and anything over $100 ships for free. We were born yesterday, but we weren't born in the dark. And unfortunately, with the way the world works now, if you don't offer free shipping or extremely low cost shipping, you're going to get beat out because of the Amazons of the world. So all of our stuff is shipping costs is just negligible. We do offer expedited shipping for certain medications because we realize people need it in a hurry. But most of the stuff, for anybody that's ever bought from us before, they'll tell you that 99% of the time your orders are processed the day that you put them in, and they usually ship the very next morning. So it's fast shipping. You're in Texas. For instance, if you were to order today, you would have it in, depending on the speed of the U.S. Postal Service or UPS, you're going to have it in 3 to 5 days, and it's going to cost you, at worst, it's going to cost you $1. So good question. Thank you. Hi, Tim. I would like to send my feed analysis. Would I need, so to get my take on that? Yeah, we get a lot of questions from people about feed analysis. Just take a picture of your feed label and just send me an email with it on there. So when I'm looking at feed analysis, what do I look at? So the very first thing that my eyes go to is your calcium phosphorus ratio. So we always want, anytime you're looking at a feed that you're giving to males, be it a wether or an intact male, we always want your eyes to go to the calcium phosphorus ratio. So that we always want that calcium ratio to ideally be 1.5 times what the phosphorus ratio is. I like to tell people twice what the phosphorus ratio is, and that's to prevent urinary calculi. The urinary calculi that you experience in sheep and goat males, especially in wethers, is specifically due to a calcium phosphorus imbalance, and that comes from having way too much phosphorus. So we offer a free choice mineral that has no phosphorus. It has the selenium and everything else in it, but it has no phos. We try as hard as we can to keep the phosphorus away from our males altogether. But that's the first thing that my eyes go to is the calcium phosphorus ratio. The other thing that we look at is we start looking at what's the part per million and what's the international units of the various vitamins and minerals that's in there. Now, phosphorus is a very important thing to milk production. It's very important for mom when those babies are developing inside mom. So, you know, you don't want to get stuck in a trick bag where you're like, oh, I want low phos, low phos, low phos, because you can hurt milk production and you can hurt other things with moms. If you get a really good dairy goat feed, or if you get a really good milk maker feed, it's going to be really high in phosphorus. And that's why we always encourage people. It is too darn hard to really dial in your nutrition if you're running your males and your females together. Now, we understand there's a limited window of time where you're going to have babies on moms and things like that. But, if you're talking about adults, if you're talking about your rams and your bucks versus your ewes and your does, it's really hard to get the two to meet in the middle to where we're giving them the right nutrition that they need, and we're also preventing urinary calculi. Now, things like ammonium chloride that are in feed, yeah, they work good, and they do help, but ultimately you're going to be behind the power curve if your calcium phosphorus ratio is out of whack. But I'm always happy to look at a feed label, so just send it to me and I'll look at it and I'll get back with you. I try to get back with everybody as quickly as I can, but I'm like you guys, I have a day job, so I do my best. Yeah, good. Da, 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 da. Bill Martin said he usually gets it within 3 days. So, and that depends on where you're located. Like, there's the postal service. I should have a special where I just bash the postal service. They do good and they work hard. It's just it's tough for them. We have, depending on how rural your location is, we had an individual in Maine last week that requested expedited shipping. It was the 11th. I bought UPS second day air shipping with UPS, and it said it was getting delivered on the 16th. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but 11th to the 16th, that's more than 2 days. But it was just, the lady said that even with expedited shipping through Amazon, she said it normally takes 2 weeks to get her package where she's at in Maine. So, it is what it is. Something for you to keep in mind. All right. Last but not least, I wanted to wrap it up with two things. The first one is we are not huge friends of the powdered milk people. They don't like us very much, and that's because we normally tell people we don't like powdered milk replacers. Even the really, really good stuff, we see a lot of scouring with that. We would highly encourage you, if you have bottle baby lambs or bottle baby kids, if you are experiencing scours with your babies when you're bottle feeding them, we would highly, highly encourage you to utilize a whole milk mix that you can mix up yourself from the grocery store. I'm not going to put the directions here, but if you go to the download, if you haven't checked out the download section of LinessaFarms.com, just do it. Like, there's tons and tons of free stuff, spreadsheets and directions and all kinds of stuff on there that you can get, and it's all free. So, go nuts, share it with your friends. But if you go to the download section of LinessaFarms.com, we have formulas for making whole milk, uh, lamb formula, goat formula, dairy goat formula, all that stuff. You can download it. You can mix it up yourself. Just do what I do, go to Aldi and get a shopping cart full of milk. Um, they won't let you do that. Sometimes they'll let you do that. Sometimes they won't. But it's pretty simple. It's milk. It's condensed milk. And it is, or evaporated milk, and it's adding some fat. And you'll notice that your scours will cease usually right away when you switch them to that. The other thing that I want you guys to watch out for is I want you to watch out for lick tubs, especially with your youngsters. So we had someone contact us last week, and they said, um, I all they were their lambs and their goat kids were just dropping over dead. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? They're like, they're fine. They're dropping over dead. And so when we started looking at what they were doing, is they were offering lick tubs. And he said, yeah, I've got these lick tubs, and the animals really love it, and the babies are really going after it. And when we looked at the ingredients of the lick tub, they had a ton of urea in them. And what happens with our young lambs and goat kids, and sometimes even with our adults, is they can get what's called urea toxicity. So basically what happens is when they take in that high urea feed and it hits the rumen, it's converted into ammonia, and that ammonia kills them deader than a doornail. So if you're going to introduce lick tubs, you need to do it extremely carefully. You need to watch out how much urea is in there, and you need to temper them as they get onto that. I don't mess with them at all. I think you're better off doing some kind of a creep feed out of a pellet without the urea. But that's just my take. I just want to let you know because it was something that I saw, and I don't want you guys to make the same mistake. So, all right. Well, I really like visiting with you guys. I'm glad that we were able to do this. I'm going to try to do this. Um, as we're in lambing and kidding season now, it's difficult for us to put out the videos all the time. Like, for instance, today with the weather and everything, I knew I wasn't going to be able to put out a video. So I thought this was a good option. Let me know in the comments section below if you're watching this as a recording or if you're watching this live, and let me know what works better for you. We used to do this during the week on Wednesday evenings, late at like 8 o'clock at night. I'm thinking that Sunday, late morning, afternoons is going to work better for people because most of us are off of work, but just let me know what you think. And we will go from there. We have a video that's coming out this week where I'm going to be talking about more advanced and new drugs and methods that are coming out there. We're going to talk about a vaccine for hoof rot. We're going to be talking about other ways to treat CL with antibiotics that is showing some promise. We're going to be talking about mastitis vaccines. And I'm trying to think. It seems like there's one other thing that we're going to be talking about, but we're going to be talking about some of these newer things that are coming out through the university studies that are showing a lot of promise. So make sure that you watch for that and you check that out. I think it'll be useful for you. All right, guys. Well, I hope you all have an enjoyable rest of your weekend. It has been a pleasure to visit with you today. We really appreciate all of your support over the years. We're continuing to grow, but it's because of people like you. So thank you very much. And God bless you all. Have a great day, and we will talk to you soon. I'm Tim from Linessa Farm Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us again today, and I look forward to seeing all of you again next time.